As I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm concerned that 80% of the South Asia budget is earmarked for Global Health Initiative, Feed the Future, and global climate change programs, $276 million out of the $345 million. Could you explain how this impacts the flexibility in the budget to respond to crises or needed changes in priorities? South Asia, because of its geographic location and history, has a potential to become a breeding ground for terrorist activity. So how does the budget allow for room to address these issues?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a very important question. First of all, as we see, some of the critical challenges facing the region are challenges of poverty and human development, and therefore focus on food security, on health, and on sustainable development to help the region cope with the effects of climate change and mitigate and adapt to climate change, I think, are certainly very, very important priorities, especially because, 1.6 billion people are inhabiting this region. And so the needs of the population is an important aspect of stability and security in the region. We are, however, making sure that we have the room and the flexibility to be able to address issues of democracy and governance, issues of economic connectivity and trade, and also ensure that we are doing more and better on counterterrorism and on security cooperation. One of the things that we've sought to do over the years is try to reserve some level of assistance or some level of funding for regional programs where we can use those funds as targets of opportunity open up across the South and Central Asia region. And we will continue to look for some flexibility in regional funding to augment the bilateral programs so that we can respond to new challenges and new opportunities in the region.
Thank you. Ms. Rollins, let me turn to you if I can. In your testimony, you discussed that USAID's priorities in Sri Lanka are to deepen engagement with civil society groups that protect human rights and promote democracy and good governance, which we certainly would agree with. At the same time, you acknowledge that the ability for USAID to carry out much of its programming in these areas is becoming increasingly difficult. In light of recent news that the government of Sri Lanka will amend current laws regarding foreign funding to NGOs in order to more closely scrutinize what organizations receive, are you concerned that this could negatively impact which organizations we can fund and the effectiveness of our assistance to support the priorities that you listed?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for that question. We are very concerned about the closing space for civil society in Sri Lanka. We are working with a number of local partners to continue to fund these organizations. We're working not only in the North and the East. As you know, we've had a very robust humanitarian assistance program in the North and the East, those populations that were affected by the Civil War. But we are actually now in the process of expanding to work more with youth organizations to really kind of double down on reconciliation. What we've discovered is that we've spent that the North and the South are areas that really need our assistance, but we want to make sure that populations in the South and populations in the North have opportunities to really work on some of the challenging community issues and get to know each other better. So we're working on reconciliation. But we believe that we will be able to continue doing our work and funding those organizations.
All right. Thank you. I've only got a short period of time left, but I'll go back to you, Ms. Biswal, if I can. I mentioned I'd been in Bangladesh it was shortly before the elections that I was there and met with both Sheikh Hasina and Khalida Zia, and have met with them previously, both here and over there in the past, so I know them somewhat. And when you talk to them, obviously their point of views are very different. They're very strong leaders, unfortunately don't particularly care for each other or each other's point of views. And as far as the election goes, as I had mentioned in my opening statement, only 10% of the people turned out to vote. What is the administration doing, either in the background or out front, to encourage a resolution of this matter in a real election so that we don't get 10%, but a lot higher number, and you have a legitimate government in place?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me just thank you for the very timely visit that you made to Bangladesh and the important contribution you made towards trying to reach some sort of political dialogue. Your ongoing engagement and the interest of the U.S. Congress has been an important factor. We have pressed the government on political inclusion because we believe that all of the gains that Bangladesh has made in its economy, in its development trajectory, that all of those gains are fragile and unsustainable in the long term if it does not have political stability. And political stability is not possible without some greater degree of political inclusion. So this, I think, is both a short-term and a long-term undertaking for us in our engagement with the Bangladeshi government and with Bangladeshi people writ large and civil society organizations. In the short term, I don't think we have seen a tremendous amount of movement, but we continue to engage with our counterparts in the international community as well as with the United Nations on trying to press for support to the Elections Commission, support to political parties at the grassroots level, and processes that can help create a more inclusive environment. I can't say to you that we've made tremendous progress in the short term, but I think we're committed to staying engaged in the long term to try to move this forward.
Okay, thank you. So I would just encourage the administration, either behind the scenes or to the extent you're able to do everything possible to encourage a resolution of this, and because if it's not resolved, I'm afraid the violence is going to escalate. And an ally, a good ally of the United States, and one that has kind of traditionally been looked upon as kind of a model for a moderate Muslim country, could become just the opposite. We don't want to see that happen.